You know, some stories from World War II are just so wild, so unbelievable, they honestly sound like something out of a movie. But I promise you, the story of Corporal Wojtek, the bear who became a soldier in the Polish army, is 100% true.
I mean, it's really one of the most remarkable tales of friendship to ever come out of a war. So the big question is, right, how on earth does a Syrian brown bear end up with an official rank, a serial number, and a permanent spot in military history? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock back to 1942.
All right, so let's get into it. Our story kicks off not on some European battlefield like you might expect, but way out in the Middle East. And it starts with a group of soldiers who had already been through absolute hell.
We're talking about the men of the Polish Second Corps. You might know them as Anders' army. And these guys, they were survivors through and through. See, after the Soviets invaded Poland back in '39, thousands of them were shipped off to brutal Siberian gulags. Then, in 1941, this amnesty deal lets them form their own army. By '42, they're evacuated from the Soviet Union, trekking through Iran on this long, grueling journey to join up with the Allies. I mean, they were thousands of miles from home, and they had practically nothing left.
And it's right there, near a railroad station in Iran, that something incredible happens. They run into this young boy who's got this tiny, orphaned Syrian brown bear cub. Turns out its mother had been shot by hunters, and these soldiers, who were basically refugees themselves, they looked at this little cub and saw a fellow orphan. So they bought him from the boy for whatever they could scrape together, a few coins, some chocolate, a can of beef, just the spontaneous act of kindness right in the middle of a horrible war.
And what's really incredible is the immediate effect this little guy had on them. You have to remember, these soldiers had just escaped the absolute hell of Soviet labor camps. For them, this small, helpless creature was, well, it was a link back to the very humanity they'd been fighting so hard to hold on to. He wasn't just a pet, not at all. It was like therapy.
The soldiers gave him the name Wojtek, that's pronounced Wojtek, which translates to joyful warrior. And wow, what a perfect name that turned out to be. In the very beginning, he was so tiny he couldn't even swallow properly, so they had to feed him condensed milk out of an old vodka bottle. Right from the start, he was one of them.
Okay, so as Wojtek starts to grow, he kind of graduates from being just a cute mascot to a real, full-fledged member of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company. He wasn't just with the soldiers anymore, he was becoming one of them.
It's wild. He just started copying everything his human family did. He absolutely loved to wrestle with the guys, and his favorite reward? A bottle of beer, which he'd drink right down. He'd even take cigarettes, though he usually just ate them instead of smoking them. He learned to march on his hind legs and would even salute when he was greeted. He was a soldier, no doubt about it.
So Wojtek and his company, they journey all across the Middle East. We're talking Iran, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, and finally Egypt. And all this time, he's growing from this little cub into a pretty powerful 200-pound bear. But just as they're getting ready to ship out and join the big fight in Italy, they run into a huge problem.
You see, the British military transport ships had this super strict no pets policy, no mascots allowed. And for the soldiers, leaving Wojtek behind was just not an option. He was family. So what were they going to do? Well, they came up with an absolutely brilliant solution. If Wojtek couldn't get on the ship as a pet, he'd get on as a soldier. So on April 14, 1944, they officially drafted him into the Polish army. I'm not kidding. They gave him the rank of private, a service number, 253 to be exact, and his very own paybook. He was now officially Private Wojtek.
And get this, it wasn't just some sneaky trick they pulled. The British authorities actually approved his travel. Why? Because the Polish commanders made an official argument that his presence was absolutely vital for the soldiers' morale. His role as the joyful warrior was now officially recognized by the Allied command.
So, with Private Wojtek officially on the roster, the 22nd Company lands in Italy, and they are about to be thrown into one of the most brutal, difficult battles of the entire war, the Battle for Monte Cassino. It's right here that Wojtek's story goes from remarkable to legendary.
The fight for Monte Cassino was just an absolute meat grinder. And the 22nd Company's job? To keep the front lines supplied with ammunition. That meant hauling these massive, 100-pound crates of artillery shells up these winding, treacherous mountain roads, all while under constant enemy fire. It was just grueling, incredibly dangerous work. Then, right in the thick of it, Wojtek sees his friends, his comrades, straining to move these heavy ammo crates. And, true to form, he does what he always does. He copies them. He just stands up on his hind legs, holds out his paws, and starts carrying the crates. These 100-pound boxes that took 4 men to lift, all by himself. He carried them over to the trucks and artillery positions and never dropped a single one. It sounds like a tall tale, but there are eyewitness accounts. An astonished British soldier even confirmed it later, saying he saw a full-grown bear just calmly carrying mortar shells right past him. Unbelievable.
Now, his bravery and just sheer strength did not go unnoticed, not by a long shot. For his direct contribution to the Battle at Monte Cassino, Private Wojtek received an official promotion. He was now Corporal Wojtek.
And to make sure his actions were never forgotten, the Polish High Command approved a brand new emblem for the 22nd Company. From that day forward, their official insignia was a bear carrying an artillery shell, a permanent tribute to their most extraordinary comrade in arms.
But after the war finally ended, the soldiers of the Polish Second Corps had to face a really bitter truth. Their home, Poland, was now under Soviet control, the very regime they had fought so hard to escape. For so many of them, going home just wasn't an option, and that included Wojtek.
So the 22nd Company was sent to Scotland to be demobilized. They were stationed at Winfield Airfield, and Wojtek, well, he became an instant local celebrity. The whole community just adored him. He'd go to local dances with the soldiers, and was even made an honorary member of the Polish-Scottish Association. For a little while at least, he got to enjoy a peaceful life with his friends.
But then, in 1947, the soldiers were finally demobilized. They had to start building new lives as civilians, and that meant a heartbreaking decision had to be made. There was just no way they could properly care for a full-grown bear anymore. So Wojtek was given to the Edinburgh Zoo, and just like that, his life of adventure, of brotherhood, of purpose, it was over, replaced by the quiet confinement of retirement.
That bond, though, it was never broken. His old Polish comrades visited him for years. They'd bring him cigarettes, just like the old days. Some would even jump into his enclosure to have a friendly wrestle, just like they used to. And right up until he passed away in 1963, zookeepers said he would always perk up, always get excited whenever he heard visitors speaking Polish. It was a memory of the family he never, ever forgot.
You know, Wojtek's story is so much more than just a quirky wartime curiosity. It's really become this powerful, lasting symbol of loyalty, of courage, and of the incredible friendships that can be forged in the fires of war.
And today, his legacy is literally set in stone and bronze all over the world. You can find statues of him everywhere, from Edinburgh and London to Krakow and even Cassino, Italy. And these memorials, especially the ones in Scotland and Poland, they're not just for a bear. They're a tribute to all the Polish soldiers who fought for freedom, who had to find a new home, and to the amazing animal who became the perfect symbol of their unbreakable spirit.
So, in the end, Wojtek's story really makes you think, doesn't it? It forces us to ask a bigger question. At a time of just unimaginable cruelty and dehumanization, a group of exiled soldiers and an orphaned bear cub managed to remind the world what it really means to be a comrade, a friend, and a joyful warrior.